Team, HH, Thursdays, Yahiko, 9/10. Why do you have to leave so hurriedly? We still have a lot to talk about. Why don't you leave after a break? The Gluttony Emperor looked at Yeon-woo with regret. He usually hated taking even a few steps outside of the castle, and seeing how he came outside of the castle himself, Yeon-woo could tell he was sincere. No. I'm grateful for the exemplary treatment. I barely made enough time to come here. I'll make some more time for my next visit. Ha 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 ha. Well, your life is busier and fiercer than anyone else's, and that is your charm. I'll cheer you on from far away. The Gluttony Emperor patted Yeon-woo's hand with his own. When he licked his lips, he looked like someone who was losing out on something delicious. Just then, Duke Tuan-tien brought a chest over and silently held it out to Yeon-woo. This is a gift that His Majesty is bestowing upon his friend. Yeon-woo looked at it and asked the Gluttony Emperor. What is this? Try opening it. The Gluttony Emperor smiled with a face filled with his large pores. Yeon-woo took the chest from Duke Tuan-tien and carefully opened it. With a clack, a sword that was about the length of an arm was there. The blade was bent, and the jewels on the sword made it look more like a sword for decoration instead of for battle. Moonlight of Blessed Ones. Category, Dagger, Amulet. Rank, S. Summary, the sky always covers the sky and shines on those walking in moonlight. The path that you walk will always be blessed with bright light. Asterisk moonlight leading luck. A great amount of luck will be given to whatever the owner does. The percentage of the owner's success will increase as long as it doesn't harm the rules and laws surrounding it. It will raise attacking and defensive power. When creating something, the item will be blessed. The concept of luck wasn't that clear in the tower. There were always unknown variables that would occur with whatever people did. However, because it raised the percentage of success directly, the Gluttony Emperor's gift was extremely priceless. Didn't you say you were working hard on something? I don't know what it is, but I hope you succeed. This item is something I cherish, too. Wear it around your neck as a necklace. It'll be very effective. Ha ha ha. Yeon-woo closed the chest, looking at the bright Gluttony Emperor, and bowed with gratitude. What a giving tree! Is this a bribe to talk to the martial king about him? With the alliance against White Dragon, the Jamshid liquor, all kinds of elixirs, and now the moonlight of Blessed Ones, Yeon-woo was beginning to feel sorry for the Gluttony Emperor. Not that anything will change. That pig guy needs to know what you're thinking. Shut up. He ignored Shannon's provocative remark and left the Bloodlands outer space. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Kreutz carefully approached Yeon-woo and asked him a question. Are you planning on allying yourself with the Gluttony Emperor? The alliance with Bloodland and Black Dragon. If this became known, the tower would be flipped on its side. There would be a force to oppose the Great White Dragon. Also, it hadn't been long since the River of Souls incident. Also, Yeon-woo's decision could change the outcome of the war. There wasn't anything to say about the One-Horned Tribe, which was in a special relationship with Yeon-woo, and the souls he commanded were destructive enough to stand against an entire emerging clan. On top of this, the Fantasy Regiment considered Yeon-woo close to it. Anyone allied with all of them would have a dramatically greater amount of forces. Yeon-woo was a threatening storm whose small actions may cause commotion in the tower. Of course Kreutz would be sensitive about this matter. He needed to know how close Yeon-woo and the Gluttony Emperor were. He was feeling rushed, which was unlike himself. But Yeon-woo didn't say anything and just looked at Kreutz. He had an indifferent gaze. Kreutz suddenly came to attention. He sighed. Sorry. That's none of my business. In fact, it was only the Fantasy Regiment who considered them close, and that wasn't the case for Yeon-woo. Rather, he had already done a lot by revealing his location to a stranger. But if he was acting that close, there was a need to put some distance between them. Kreutz realized he just broke his promise and apologized, leaving on the flying dragon. He was going to come back after organizing his thoughts. Yeon-woo looked at Kreutz's back and confirmed his quest window. Materials to construct Cunning. Apodis scales, 45/45. Magic sword stone, 2 halves. Jamshid liquor, 12/5. Adamantine nova, 0/1. Now, only the adamantine nova is left. Yeon-woo narrowed his eyes. I still collected them faster than I thought. If he had searched for them one by one, it would have taken him at least a few months. It could have taken even longer, or he might have not been as successful in obtaining them. Time was of the essence, but a lot of the materials were from the higher floors. Still, since he had by the table's help, he was able to progress much faster. Atran said the adamantine nova was in the process of being procured, so he would be able to have it soon. Shouldn't the negotiations be done by now? Yeon-woo blew his consciousness into Frisia's mirror. Atran. Above the bead, a hologram popped up. Atran turned around with surprised eyes. Only half of his body was turned around, and he wasn't looking at him properly. He looked like someone who had been caught hiding something. What? What was he doing? Yeon-woo looked at him suspiciously. He usually spoke formally to his customers while also calling them pushovers, but he looked rushed for some reason. I was wondering how the adamantine nova was going. You said they were in the final negotiation stage. Ah, it's going fine, so don't worry. I'm busy right now, so I'll contact you later. Atran quickly ended the call. He had tried to hide it, but he couldn't avoid Yeon-woo's sharp eyes. It looks like he has a black eye. Was he beat up somewhere? Yeon-woo narrowed his eyes. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. It was evening when Atran showed himself again. He didn't come through the messaging device but through the portal. And for some reason, his shoulders were drooped, like he had suddenly become depressed. What's wrong with your eye? He even had a patch on one of his eyes. Hey? Oh, I fell tripped. Atran couldn't meet Yeon-woo's eyes and turned his head around. Yeon-woo looked him up and down. Were you beat up by someone? Why would I be beat up by someone? I'm Atran. I'm a big fish of by the table who doesn't have much longer to go until the flower rank. Who would dare touch me? He was beat up. A lot of new chapters on novelin.com. It's not easy to touch a mysterious merchant, though. Shannon and Han Ryong looked at Atran, who was jumping up and down, and nodded. At the same time, they were surprised. Mysterious merchants always lived in danger. It was because of the thieves who mugged them. So while mysterious merchants created unions for safety, they were famous for using mercenary clans or the bureau to get revenge. Also, although Yeon-woo considered Atran a loser, he was actually well known in his field. Still, the fact that they had touched him meant that they were confident or someone skilled. Yeon-woo lightly sighed. I guess you were beat up after chasing down some deal. Are you some kind of psychic? Atran looked at Yeon-woo with a scared face. He does have some harsh feelings towards our master. It seems like he failed the negotiations. Yeon-woo snorted and ignored what Shannon and Han Ryong were gossiping about. Actually, it was easy to guess what happened if one thought about it a bit. Possessors of adamantine nova had to be strong. Atran, who went crazy for money, had probably stuck on the person like a leech even after they denied his offer. And as for what happened after? It was obvious what had happened. Players mostly had cold or rushed personalities. It was rare to see someone nice. Atran sighed, thinking he couldn't hide it anymore. Fine. You're right. The negotiations fell through. What did they say? That they would never sell it. Atran frowned. At first, I thought they were just bargaining. So I continued to raise the offer, and then, I was hit with a pipe. Arg, that granny. Atron muttered to himself that there was never a need for violence and that she wasn't able to get married at that age because of her violent impulses. He seemed to have been wronged. Pipe. Granny. Yeon-woo tilted his head in curiosity. Who was the owner? I can't tell you that. It was by the table's rule to keep information about its customers a secret. Do you really need that adamantium nova? If you have time, I'll try to gather adamantium and ask for it to be made. No. I need it now. Adamantium nova wasn't an item that could be made so easily. First off, it would take forever just to gather the adamantium, and it would take years to condense it. Even if an artisan got to work on it, it would take at least a year. But the situation in Tartarus? They didn't have that kind of time. Just what kind of quest did you receive to need that kind of stuff? Atron hadn't heard about what Yeon-woo was planning on making, so he sighed. Are you interested in selling information about the owner? I'll try convincing her. No. Why? Can I not purchase people's information? That's true. But it's a bit complicated. Atron frowned. First, the owner is one of the top VIPs of our union, and she pays us every year not to sell her information. Such VIPs among our customers are rare. By the table had a strong influence in the entire universe, not just in the tower. If she was a big fish in that group. Is she one of the 9 kings? Or someone at that level? He was suspicious. And more than anything, there was the most important reason. The owner is the best friend of our master. Just telling you this is, you know. It meant he was forbidden to talk about it. Yeon-woo nodded and clicked his tongue. He didn't know he would be tied up because of the adamantium nova, which was something he thought would be easiest to get. Then I'll have to talk to Phrygia herself. What? Hey? Hey? Fearing that Yeon-woo would meet his boss because he was incapable, Atron shouted. Walk. However, Yeon-woo was already calling Phrygia through the Jade Mirror. It was the first time he contacted her after receiving the Jade Mirror. Atron's face turned pale. Kain? Why are you calling me in the middle of the night? She wore a wooden mask on her face. Short red hair that looked like it was on fire. Phrygia must have been in the middle of feeding her white wolf because she turned her head with a piece of meat in her hand. Why, you really contacted her? Atron covered his face with his hand. His incompetence was going to be delivered directly to his superior. And on the other hand, he wondered how many customers had Phrygia on the speed dial. Yeon-woo was probably on the same level as the owner of the adamantium nova. Actually, while Atron was in charge of Yeon-woo, he didn't know exactly what Yeon-woo's status was in the union. I think you know why I contacted you. If it's about the owner of the adamantium nova, I cannot tell you. So she knew. This is her condition. Aside from her being my personal acquaintance, we can't lose someone like her. Still, there's a saying that goes like this. There's no deal that can't be done. There's no deal that can't be done. Phrygia repeated what Yeon-woo said and smirked. Not because it was funny but to tell him to show her what he had. That's true. Then what is the item you have in mind? Also, the amount of money that's going into sponsoring you is the greatest we have ever given. You know that most items won't even be considered, right? From the construction of the outer space to Brahm's experiments, Yeon-woo was like a money-sucking leech to buy the table. The reason why Hades is missing, what's happening in Tartarus, the situation with the titans and giants, and what I'm trying to create. Don't you think that sounds good? Phrygia's eyes widened. It wasn't clear because it was through a hologram, but he could feel he had piqued her interest. Please continue. Yeon-woo began to speak about what he saw and heard in Tartarus. From what Yeon-woo saw, the rebellion of the titans and giants was priceless information that could be sold at an expensive price. It was something Olympus and the gods and demons of the 98th floor didn't know about. One may think that what went on in the heavenly world wouldn't matter to the players in the lower world. However, gods and demons were beings who composed the laws, and they were crucial to the tower's system. Of course, depending on what happened to them, players would be affected, too. If this information was dealt with well, by the table could earn a huge profit. Furthermore, military intel was what merchants all wanted. Atron, who had been listening next to him, widened his eyes. Just what did this human do that he not only shook up Red Dragon but the world of gods, too? So that's what happened. Frisia stroked her chin and nodded. Like what Yeon-woo thought, it was definitely priceless information. However, it's still not enough. Do you have anything else? He didn't think she would come out this expensively. Yeon-woo clicked his tongue and added what he had saved for the end. If I can create Cunning, I'll obtain the title of artisan. Don't you want to be the first to receive an item created by an artisan? It's tempting, but we have a customer like that. Also, you're not an artisan yet. What if it's an item that's created from the help of Brahm, Hanova, and even these beings? Yeon-woo snapped his fingers. Behind him, the Cyclopes Brontes and Sterapes appeared. The two giants frowned, displeased, but they had to listen to Yeon-woo, given the current situation. Frisia's eyes widened when she recognized the two Cyclopes. Then, she grinned. I guess it can't be helped. If it's an item touched by two blacksmiths who are equal to Hephaestus, no, his were teachers, then I'm tempted. So how about an exclusive supply agreement? That's not enough, but we can give you priority. This time, Yeon-woo stepped back. When Yeon-woo repeated what she said to him, she clicked her tongue internally. But this deal wasn't bad. The owner of Adamantine Nova. The name he heard was familiar. Someone named Anastasia. Team, HH, Thursdays, Yahiko, 10/10. Anastasia. Had she felt Yeon-woo's shock? Frisia was surprised by his reaction. Do you know Fox? I mean, Anastasia. Fox. It was a perfect name to describe Anastasia. Victoria's teacher, Anastasia. When he first looked for Victoria, she had spoken to him harshly, telling him not to return. He could vividly recall the danger he was in when he confronted her. Ah! I remember Victoria's disciple was once a sadhu. And so was the Iron Lion's sadhu. Then is that when? Yes. Frisia burst into laughter. It's a small world, but no one is as closed off from the world as she is. But you know her. It's impressive for a player who just entered the 30th floor. I don't exactly know her. I suppose. She's extremely wary of others. But she does all kinds of audacious acts behind that facade. Frisia narrowed her eyes. Anyways, this is it for our deal. Our trade with Anat Asia is finished, too, so you have to take care of the rest. Thank you. For what? This was all just give and take. Frisia was about to end the hologram session but then remembered something and turned to Yeon-woo. Oh, right, and here. Is there something else? Yeol misses you. I'll set up a meeting for you, so meet him then. Of course, you'll have to return safely from Tartarus. Yeol. It was a name he was glad to hear. No. Before that, there's something you'll have to go through. I hope things work out. Frisia left mysterious words before leaving. Yeon-woo quietly put the jade mirror back. I'm not going to be fired, right? Atron was concerned about his customer being taken from him after hearing the news that his master's disciple would come soon. Yeon-woo went to the entertainment district in the outer section of the tower. Although she might not be here anymore. Frisia had said even she didn't know where Anastasia stayed. Anastasia was a free spirit. She moved carefully even when making deals. Yeon-woo just went to where he had first met Anastasia. Last time, the roof was blown off because of the fight. He thought he might have been able to find her if he looked around the building. Isn't that? Yeah. That mask. He looks like the hoarder. Unlike last time, there was almost no one who approached Yeon-woo. There was no one in the tower who didn't know about him. He was the face of the 6 new stars, no, the 5 new stars now. They said only ruins were left in his wake, so he was treated like a moving disaster. Yeon-woo ignored the gazes and arrived at his destination. The building must have been restored because prostitutes and those trying to hire them were bustling around. But the moment Yeon-woo appeared, they disappeared instantly. When all the customers disappeared, the manager inside the building came running out frantically. He had just been about to lay with someone he'd been buying small presents for. He had come out in such a rush that his pants weren't fully pulled up. When he saw Yeon-woo, he gasped. He remembered the commotion from a long time ago. Thinking of the damage from back then, his hands began to tremble. He hadn't expected him to come back. Is Anastasia here? And no. Yeon-woo pulled out the magic bayonet and split the air in front of him. Then, the roof was blown away. The customers and prostitutes on the higher floors who had wanted to make love while looking at the scenery below them all hid in fear. So she's not here. Yeon-woo glanced inside and quickly turned his body elsewhere. The manager, who had been standing there blankly when the roof went flying off again, quickly grabbed Yeon-woo. From what he knew, Yeon-woo wasn't someone to let things end like that. He wasn't called a walking disaster, the coming of the martial king's youth, or split personality for nothing. What will you do? Yeon-woo replied with a question. What are you going to do? Sorry. Why aren't you looking for her? Business will be hard for you if you don't. Yeon-woo swung his magic bayonet at the building next to it. Kwa kwa kwang. Once again, the roof flew off into the distance. When the building shook like it was going to crumble, customers and prostitutes who barely got their clothes on and staff members quickly ran out. She's not here either. Kia. He acts exactly like his teacher. It truly is better to shake things up if you can't find what you're looking for. Yeon-woo moved on to the next building. Shannon. What? I think you've been acting out more frequently these days. Hee. No way. It's all in your head. Yeon-woo shook his head. He didn't know why Shannon was becoming more sly as time went on. But at the same time, it meant that they were becoming closer, so he wasn't completely against it. Boom. As each building collapsed, people affiliated with shadowy organizations chased after Yeon-woo, not knowing what to do, and belatedly realized what Yeon-woo was trying to do. Yeon-woo was bringing down all the buildings in the entertainment district. Anastasia was a famous VIP among the people who lived here, and she stayed here most of the time when nothing was going on. He thought that Anastasia would come since he was causing so much ruckus. At the same time, it was a warning for the people who lived there to go find Anastasia if they didn't want the district to be ruined. Kwang. Ah! What are you doing? Look for Ms. Anastasia. Anastasia had saved many of their lives, but they had to bow in the face of danger. As each of the buildings was crushed, the drug addicts came to attention, and the prostitutes ran around busily. What is going on? A loud voice echoed from above. The people who had been running around stopped and bowed their heads. Yeon-woo stopped swinging his sword and turned around. Anastasia was standing gracefully on top of the cafe on the 5th floor. Her eyes were half closed, and the clothes she was wearing only covered her upper body. Her lower body was completely exposed. One beautiful child, who followed her quickly, covered her, and she looked around. Then, she found Yeon-woo. Kiddo, did you do this? Anastasia looked annoyed. She hated being woken. Falling asleep while high with beautiful children was the only source of joy in her life. Of course she was angry. Do you know who I am? And yet, you still did this. Yeon-woo narrowed his eyes. What was she talking about? She was acting like she didn't know him. He was about to say something when a beautiful child whispered something in Anastasia's ear. She realized who Yeon-woo was and sobered up. "You're the one who was looking for Victoria." Her face crumpled. "But why are you here? I thought I told you to never come back." "This time, I'm not here to see Victoria." "Then? The Adamantine Nova. You have it, right?" Yeon-woo spoke with open speaking so only she could hear. "How did you? Oh, you must be behind the one who kept on asking for it." Anastasia remembered Atran and frowned even more. "No, aside from that, how did you know I have it? It should be a secret. That wolf bitch sold me out." She was furious after realizing the situation. This is why lowly merchants. They only know how to flatter people. Anastasia promised to pick this up with them the next time she met. There was nothing worse than having your information available for everyone to see. "Leave. I already said this multiple times, but I'll sell this over my dead body. I need the item." "Oh? What are you gonna do with it?" Yeon-woo looked up at her and pulled out his sword from his pocket. "What is it? You want to burn everything to the ground if we don't talk." A smile grew on her lips. Walk. White smoke surrounded Yeon-woo, and he began to gather energy to himself. The moment Vidyard marked Anastasia as a target, a violent aura whipped around them. The aura of the two high rankers caused earthquakes. While the entertainment district was being destroyed. "I tried to forgive you because you were the friend of my foolish disciple. But if you want to die, I'll kill you." Anastasia flicked her finger. Magic power raced towards Yeon-woo. At the same time, his shadow opened, and souls came out to block her. Guhufideu up ts on novelin.com. In the middle of the great fight, boom. He quickly ran at Anastasia. If he couldn't make a deal, he had to steal it. There was no other way. He needed the Adamantine Nova to make Cunning and unlock clues about his pocket watch. If he stepped back here, he didn't know how long he would have to wait. He swung the grid. Smoke rose from where wave of fire struck Anastasia. Anastasia stretched her hand out in the air. The smoke around her scattered, and a new foxfire was created wrapped around her. Qua 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 quang. The wave of fire exploded before it could reach Anastasia. The building she had been on couldn't endure the impact and completely crumbled. Sparks flew, and the heat became a storm, covering the area they were in. Krrr. S. Run away. Ms. Anastasia and the hoarder are fighting. The locals on the streets quickly began to flee. To normal people, a fight between high rankers was equivalent to a natural disaster. It was because no one knew how much damage the battle would cause. Some people lost their businesses and stores because of the fight, but Yeon-woo and Anastasia weren't the types to care. Blow. Just then, the farthest right tail of Anastasia flamed green. The monstrous energy around Anastasia strengthened. Phew! She lightly blew on her fingers, and the energy flowing around her spewed air bombs that were as big as a person's head. The foxfire flared again. In the areas where foxfire touched, strange phenomena occurred. The space would shake or suddenly become cold. Yeon-woo pulled the wave of fire back to him and combined it with a black aura. He swung it at Anastasia. Qua qua qua. The air bombs were countered each time the grid was swung. The monstrous energy that leaked out became foxfire again, but it couldn't pierce through the wall of souls protecting Yeon-woo. The second soul. Poo poo pung. Kiaaok. The mass of souls that was nearly a single entity at that point shifted from inside and outside Yeon-woo, energizing him and protecting him at the same time. It was a new interpretation of the martial arts taught by the One-Horned tribe. Walk. Soon, he split through the smoke and reached Anastasia. He raised the grid. His target was an arm or one of her tails. He thought it would be enough to scare her off. However, she didn't avoid it and just snorted in amusement. At the same time, her second tail lit up, and she swung the pipe in her hand. Quang! The grid and the pipe clanged against each other. It wasn't the sound of metal striking metal. It was the sound of an explosion. The buildings around them were swept away as heat waves covered them, but the two didn't stop there. Qua qua quang! Strange letters shined on Anastasia's pipe. Yeon-woo immediately realized it was a special artifact that Victoria made for her teacher. However, he couldn't understand what the runic letters on the pipe meant. They looked like runes, but they weren't. Were they letters from another world? Yeon-woo realized the letters facilitated Anastasia's use of her unique power. The brighter the pipe shined, the brighter the green fire on Anastasia's tail became. Anastasia threw down her pipe on the floor with a huff. Just then, the gumiho that was faintly standing behind Anastasia moved. Then, what is that? The gumiho pounced exactly where the pipe was thrown on the ground. Yeon-woo felt an aura from Anastasia that was different from what he had felt so far. The space around him began to shake. Yeon-woo quickly spread his wings of fire apart and activated blink simultaneously. Like how the pipe shined brilliantly, he was nearly able to use the magic he learned from Victoria to transform his wings of fire into an artifact or a skill. Pat, pat, pat. Yeon-woo landed relatively far away from where Anastasia had been. And when he saw what happened where he had just been, his eyes widened. You have good instincts, kiddo. Anastasia snorted upon seeing him. Everything around her was destroyed. Everything around her was leveled. Only Anastasia was left. The monstrous energy emitted from the broken space showed what she had just done. A charm. That is a monster that's been dormant for at least 1,000 years. Nemesis's voice rang inside his head. A being that became one with a player and turned into a legendary beast after 1,000 years. But since it had monstrous energy, I think it's most appropriate to call it a great monster. It was a warning not to fight with Anastasia. At the very least, it's on the level of the 9 kings. Even if my previous master were to come back, it would be hard to guarantee victory. Unless it's the Martial King or the Summer Queen. I think it'll be difficult. The monstrous energy around Anastasia was growing darker, and the illusion behind her even was clearing up. It was like the gumiho was standing right on top of Anastasia. The more the number of lit fox fires on her tails increased, the clearer her monstrous energy was. We barked up the wrong tree. I think we should step back. Even though Yeon-woo was becoming stronger at a quick rate, he definitely wasn't on the level of the 9 kings yet. And if she was comparable to the Martial King and Summer Queen in terms of strength, he had no chance of winning. However, no. There is a way. Under the mask, Yeon-woo grinned. What are you mumbling about? Anastasia must have read Nemesis's presence inside the Philosopher's Stone because she frowned and flicked her finger again. Her 5th tail caught on fire. Qua qua quang. Countless air bombs came from above. When the gumiho shook its tail, strong winds blew over like tornadoes. The fox fire turned the ground black. Space was crumbling in front of him like a clear layer of ice that had been someone hammered. Tentacles pierced the ground and wiggled around. Monstrous energy was a power that one borrowed from a greater being. The inexplicable phenomenon precisely spread around Yeon-woo. He would have to be crazy to fight her head-on. If so. Yeon-woo's eyes flashed coldly. Little by little. Like how your clothes end up getting drenched in a light drizzle. Draconic eyes. Extrasensory perception. Along with his consciousness, 2 skills combined as one and began to stack their flaws in between them. Wind path gust of wind. Yeon-woo forced himself into it. Once again, he ran towards where Anastasia was inside of the fox fire. He avoided the flaws that looked difficult to deal with. He was confident no other player could match his speed. What are you trying to do? However, to Nemesis, Yeon-woo looked like he was taking on something he couldn't handle. Also, only 4 tails were on fire. It meant that she still had more hidden power. When the tails light up, do you see? What? Oh. Nemesis realized what Yeon-woo was saying and glanced around. He had been focusing on just Anastasia, so he didn't look around him. The amount of souls has increased. Right. Just then, the sixth fox fire tail was ignited. The monster Shannon was taking care of melted and was absorbed by Anastasia. She has so much monstrous energy. She doesn't have holiness or divine power, so it was hard for her to coexist with all of it inside her body. That's why her appearance isn't her actual body but one of a player's. The monstrous energy Anastasia gathered in 1,000 years was amazing. However, because there was so much, it wasn't easy for her to handle it, so she usually left a part of her monstrous energy sealed outside of her body. Yeon-woo was going to take advantage of that. If they fought based on endurance, Yeon-woo was more at an advantage. It was because the Philosopher's Stone endlessly supplied him with magic. On the other hand, for Anastasia, the longer she used her monstrous energy, the harder it was on her body. What you sensed is her true power when all her tails are lit. Right now, she's in a weak state. But she still seems stronger than you. So that's why we'll use this method. Nemesis nodded in acceptance. He couldn't help but remain worried. Even with that, you won't be able to drain all her energy. Are you gonna go for a blind spot? Yes. If he faced her head-on, he would die. He quickly reached Anastasia and attacked her with Blink and the 72 Bien. Like this. Quack. Keek. You dare. There was a deep injury on Anastasia's right leg. Blood spattered into the air and disappeared. Instead, a long mass of flesh extended from her right wrist. She was hurt by a human who hadn't even lived 100 years. She couldn't let herself be humiliated like this. However, Yeon-woo had already anticipated her movements and escaped far away, only to come back and cut her thigh. The gumiho cried at the sky. It was only a small injury compared to its large body. Anastasia tried to catch Yeon-woo, but Yeon-woo escaped like a rat every time. You! She was furious seeing Yeon-woo escape again and again. It seemed like she would have to light up her sixth tail. Just then. Now. Fidu up ts on novelin.com. Yeon-woo didn't miss the timing and activated Blink. He landed right in front of Anastasia. It all happened so fast that Anastasia didn't see that Yeon-woo had come near her. It was because she didn't know about time difference. The black aura exploded once more. Anastasia's left arm was cut off. He wasn't able to do as much damage as he hoped, but one tail of the gumiho was almost completely cut. Yeon-woo activated Blink again. Hit and run. He was going to escape. At that moment, the seventh tail lit up. Walk. He froze at the feeling. He couldn't move. The air around him was stopping him. Then. Quang. Blood poured from his mouth, and he landed on the ground. The impact must have been so great that all the bones in his demonic dragon body were broken. He tried to heal himself with regeneration, but Anastasia was already standing on top of him. You dare to put me in this state? You dare to put me in this state? In the space where two faces overlapped, Yeon-woo was the receiver of a growingly angrier face. Monster eyes. The red eyes were holding Yeon-woo in place. I can't take this anymore. No more going easy just because you're my disciple's friend. I can't take this anymore. No more going easy just because you're my disciple's friend. There was something Yeon-woo had missed. Anastasia was Victoria's teacher. She would know Victoria's secrets. So. Her naked body could be seen through her loose robe, but it looked fierce with all the veins popping out. Die now! Die now! With her declaration of death, Anastasia brought her hand down towards Yeon-woo's mask. Amir. Fox. Dares. Just when Boo was about to open his eyes. That's enough, isn't it? Stop it now. A large wolf head appeared next to the gumiho. At the same time, someone grabbed Anastasia's hand. Anastasia saw Frisia wearing her usual wooden mask. She narrowed her eyes. Wolf, don't get in the way. Stay there. I'll take care of you next. Wolf, don't get in the way. Stay there. I'll take care of you next. That's why I came. Because I'm sorry. Don't you feel like you're looking at your younger self? Anastasia shut her mouth. Then, she turned her eyes to look at Yeon-woo, who was under her left arm. His eyes seemed both intense and desperate at the same time. She had the same eyes in a time she couldn't remember too well anymore. She cursed and let him go. Bitch. Bitch. Frisia chuckled. Foxes are also dogs. Victoria shut her eyes, holding a letter in her hands. Are you doing well, Granny? I mean, my lovable lady? The letter began playfully. On the 5 mountains of penances, she had hated this tone, but now, she missed it. It was a letter that Khan had sent through by the table. Over the last year, she had suffered from depression as she thought of Rebecca and Khan, who had sacrificed themselves for her. However, with the help of her teacher, she was barely able to pull herself together to return to her usual self. But then, Khan's letter had arrived. At first, she was glad. He said he was doing well and preparing to climb the floors again. But the more she read, the more something felt off. It was definitely Khan who wrote the letter. However, something was strange. She couldn't put it into words. It was like he's saying goodbye. In the letter, he sounded like he was saying goodbye to her. When she looked over the letter again, there was nothing about him coming to meet her when he had the time. Victoria touched the edges of the paper, thinking something would be hidden within it. She couldn't feel anything. Even when she cast magic on it, there was no reaction. Or maybe she created an orb of fire in her hands and began to burn the letter. As the black ashes blew around, the phenomenon that came to be was. Victoria's eyes widened. Her eyelashes fluttered with shock. Find you chapters on nfelby.com. Just then, Anastasia must have come because Victoria could feel from the magical wavelengths that the space was opening. Victoria quickly waved her hand to clean up the ashes and opened the door. The bright smile on her face returned. Master, you've come. However, Victoria couldn't finish. There were visitors following Anastasia, and they weren't the beautiful children she usually moved with. Rather, they were faces Victoria knew well. Although, technically, she didn't know their faces because of their masks. One of them was Frisia. And the other? Kane. Victoria ran to Yeon-woo and hugged him. Have you been well, ma'am? Why, you. It's a relief you look more comfortable now. Yeon-woo hugged Victoria back and patted her back. Victoria burst into tears. She felt sorry for turning Yeon-woo away when he had come the previous time. She did send her studies, but she wanted to apologize for her actions that day because they had continued to weigh on her. But he had come here himself, so she was grateful and apologetic. Bad girl. Your master came, but you don't see that I'm hurt? You go crazy for guys. Victoria forced down the urge to say it wasn't something Anastasia should have been saying and turned to look at her. She belatedly realized that the robe her master enjoyed wearing was burnt and torn and that her naked body was visible. Did something happen? You noticed so quickly. What are you doing? Bring a new one from my room. And a pipe with some tobacco. Bring it to the guest room. Yes, ma'am. Victoria slightly bowed and spoke to Yeon-woo. Let's talk later. I have something to ask you. Something to ask him? Yeon-woo had a curious face, but he just nodded. Yes, ma'am. What are you doing? Stop dilly-dallying. Yes, ma'am. Seeing Victoria quickly run into another room, Anastasia huffed. She seemed displeased with Frisia and Yeon-woo's arrival. "You two follow me, too." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. After Frisia appeared, Anastasia recalled her monstrous energy and led Yeon-woo and Frisia to her residence. Her residence was different from the commonplace architecture in the tower. Most buildings were built high into the sky like castles, but here, there was a cluster of all kinds of buildings. It was like a manor. Anastasia changed into the robe that Victoria brought and crossed her legs, sitting at the head of the table. Her robe was very revealing, but she didn't seem to care. Of course, Yeon-woo didn't look at her body. There was steaming tea sitting atop the table, but he didn't touch it either. "I don't like you." Just then, Anastasia suddenly spoke up. Yeon-woo cast Anastasia a questioning look. "I don't like that gaze of yours. Does the thing on your lower body work well?" Yeon-woo realized what Anastasia was saying and snorted. "You're not my type." "Your type? All men. You're quite arrogant." Anastasia's eyebrows twitched, and Frisia clicked her tongue. "Why don't we stop talking about strange things? Both of you are so annoying." Anastasia frowned and put the pipe in her mouth. When she exhaled, white smoke filled the room. Frisia turned to speak to Yeon-woo. "Even though she acts like that, she'll explain things to you properly, so don't worry." "Thank you for your help." "It's nothing. I received something in return for it, and since I know Anastasia well, I thought it would be better for me to come and interpret what she says for you." It seemed more like she was trying to finish the deal with Yeon-woo and appease Anastasia, but whatever her purpose, it was true that Yeon-woo had received Frisia's help, so he thanked her. "But Frisia..." "Yes. You seem to have known Anastasia for a long time. We passed by each other when we were younger." According to what Nemesis said, Anastasia was a 1,000-year-old gumiho. But if Frisia knew her well, is Frisia also her age? Wouldn't it be impolite to ask that of a woman? Frisia spoke with a twinkling laugh. She had a wooden mask on, so it was hard to see what she was thinking, but Yeon-woo felt chills run down his spine when he saw her. Tack. Just then, Anastasia put her pipe down and changed the subject. "Enough with the small talk. Like I already said, I cannot give you that, no matter what you give me. If you want to take it, you'll have to do it over my dead body." Anastasia glared at Yeon-woo. It was like the foxfire was igniting on her tails again. "I would like to know the reason why." "I don't know why you have to know the reason when the owner says they don't want to sell it. But fine. Since you're so curious, I'll show you." Anastasia stood up and moved a folding screen aside. A plain, white wall was revealed. But when she put her hand to it, the wall began to creak open. There was a flight of stairs that led underground. "Follow me." Anastasia didn't wait for Yeon-woo and Frisia's response and headed down first. There were multiple large iron doors in the path, and Anastasia used her monstrous energy every time to open the doors. There were magic equipment, traps, and even some sleeping monsters and creatures Victoria had set up. If an invader entered, they would probably attack. There were so many of them. If I had to fight these, it would have been really dangerous. It occurred to Yeon-woo that he might have been foolish in fighting her. The monsters here were probably all a part of Anastasia, and if she recalled her power, he couldn't imagine how much more powerful she'd be. The Summer Queen popped into his head. If the two fought, it would probably be an even match. Anastasia was hiding even though she had this power. What was her goal? This is where it gets real. Don't be swept away. I'll kill you without any hesitation then. She warned Yeon-woo coldly and opened the last door. Demonic energy blew over to where they were. Yeon-woo clenched his teeth. His souls blocked the energy in front of him while the despair and grief of the Black King trembled. Pretty good. Anastasia judged Yeon-woo with the pipe still in her mouth. She had seen all kinds of skills throughout her life, but Yeon-woo's skill of working with souls was interesting to her. However, Yeon-woo didn't have the mind to read her gaze. What is this? Spite. Yeon-woo turned to Anastasia. Spite. The vestiges of the ones who used to live in this damned tower. The space that he followed Anastasia into was filled with all kinds of weapons. Swords, sabers, spears, armor, helms, gauntlets. They were all hung up on the wall. The black energy that wafted up from them took the form of a person and disappeared again. Weapons with strong vestiges are bound to have souls of their own. These things are traded at a high price in the tower. He nodded. The same went for Vigrid and maybe even his magic bayonet. But do you know what happens when the vestige keeps growing? They become monsters. Yeon-woo thought of what he had heard from Earth a long time ago. Old items became monsters with time. These monsters want to swallow their masters and have their freedom. But what do you think will happen when monsters who can't think rationally are given freedom? Blood will be spilled. Correct. Everything would become chaotic. Anastasia went in even further. There, even stronger weapons and armor were exuding spite. I didn't want to see that. So I kept everything I saw under lock and stuffed it all in here. Phew. White smoke spread around them again. The smoke turned into a dark grey when it combined with the spite. But these things are always trying to escape, so there are limits to locking them up. That's why they have to be tied up. And the center of that is... She paused. The underground wasn't as big as he thought. That. He could see a black bead on the wall. It shined like a star. Adamantine Nova. He looked at it blankly because of the powerful aura that was coming from it. The Adamantine Nova is the pillar of this weapons storage room. And giving that to you? Nonsense. Then everything here will go crazy. They have a lot of grudges against me, so they'll want me to pay for it first. She had a bitter smile. You won't tell me to give it to you now, right? That's basically my life. If you get it now, F off. Anastasia isn't a just and kind person, I mean, a fox. But the reason she took in the artifacts is because of something that occurred a long time ago. Back then, she was desperate and sorrowful. After being kicked out by Anastasia, Phrygia stopped Yeon-woo and explained why Anastasia couldn't let go of the Adamantine Nova. She said the artifacts storage room was everything to Anastasia. What happened back then? Since it's not a part of our deal, I cannot tell you. I only told you this much because I hope you'll understand her. Yeon-woo nodded. All people had backstories. Naturally, a gumiho who had lived 1,000 years would also have one. It was probably hard for a normal person to understand. Of course, it's not like she isn't gaining anything from it. The artifacts themselves are high-level monsters, so they can be tools to extract monstrous energy from. But if you try to take the Adamantine Nova, things will become dangerous. Correct. Ha! Yeon-woo wiped his face with his hand. His thoughts were in a jumble. Even if he wanted to take the Adamantine Nova, with Anastasia revealing everything like that, there was no way to take it. And it wasn't like there was anyone else in the tower who had it. If there was, Phrygia would have mentioned that person already. I guess I have to make it myself. How much time and resources would it take? With Tartarus about to fall any second, time was of the essence. Even if the two Cyclopes helped, could he do it in a short amount of time? I need to ask for help from Henova, Brahm, and the head elder. And even Victoria. If they all worked together like when they made the Philosopher's Stone, wouldn't they be able to see results more quickly? Yeon-woo began to brainstorm how to finish the process as soon as possible. But why isn't Victoria coming out? Victoria had said she would meet him outside, but she hadn't shown up yet. Just then, a portal opened in front of Yeon-woo. He turned, thinking it was Victoria, but Anastasia popped out with an enraged face. Then, Kwang! Anastasia suddenly grabbed Yeon-woo's neck and threw him to the ground. Yeon-woo didn't have any time to react. Behind Anastasia, all 9 of her tails were lit up. Monstrous energy simmered in the air. As the atmosphere crumpled, a powerful pressure pushed down on Yeon-woo's chest. "Where did you hide it? Anastasia. Shut up, wolf. I'm talking to this bastard right now." Anastasia shouted at Frisia not to interfere and looked back at Yeon-woo. "Tell me. Where did you hide it?" "What? Don't pretend like you don't know." Anastasia's eyes flashed wickedly. "I'm talking about Victoria. She disappeared with the adamantine nova. If not you, then who else could have done it?" Yeon-woo felt blank, like he had been hit hard in the head with a hammer. "She disappeared. Victoria. Why?" That thought occurred to him first. Just now, when he had seen her, she was glad to see him and acted like she wanted to tell him something. "Answer me. Answer me." However, his contemplation was quickly interrupted. The gumiho overlapping with Anastasia was growling. It acted like it would swallow him up if he didn't answer her. Yeon-woo suddenly felt annoyed. He was frustrated that he couldn't obtain the adamantine nova, but now, he was being suspected of stealing it. He was infuriatingly irritated. With the feeling of something retching from his chest, something popped out. A part of the demonism from his subconscious appeared. "Let go." It was the low warning voice of a beast. The air around Yeon-woo changed instantly. Anastasia furrowed her eyebrows, realizing that something was strange. You. I said to let go." Yeon-woo grabbed Anastasia's arm with glowing eyes and started to remove it from his neck. Then, the monstrous energy of the gumiho and the magic power from the demonism clashed, causing the atmosphere to shake up and down. It was different from the fight in the entertainment district. If he was this powerful, why had he lost? Anastasia's eyes filled with murderous intent. A mere human dared to resist her. It was unpleasant. Also, she didn't like how the shadow behind Yeon-woo started to tremble like crazy from earlier. The monster portents, death lords, and even the lich inside. They were all annoying. Thinking it would be better to rip him to shreds, she raised her nails and attempted to rip apart Yeon-woo's face. Shiver. Chills ran down Anastasia's spine. Beyond the mask, there was something in Yeon-woo's eyes. It was a deep, sticky abyss that made her feel like if her soul was caught, she would be trapped forever. And the thing that was hunched over inside looking at her. The moment she met its eyes, Anastasia felt fear for the first time in hundreds of years. It was a great being that considered a 1,000-year-old gumiho like her as prey. "Stop acting out. You're only a pet of Rhea. That's enough of your cute tricks." Anastasia stiffened at the voice that pierced her head. Just then, Yeon-woo moved her arm to the side and stood up. "Don't grasp at straws. Victoria's disappearance has nothing to do with me." It was a completely different tone from the voice that had just rung out. Anastasia looked at Yeon-woo with a blank expression. Yeon-woo narrowed his eyes, not knowing why. She was the one who wanted to look at him with the look that he was giving her. He didn't seem to know about the voice. How could he not know about it? Anastasia shook her head. Whatever was in Yeon-woo's eyes, it was dangerous. Also, it had said that she was Rhea's pet. That was a secret that she hadn't told anyone, not even Frisia. It meant that it recognized her. Anastasia decided to take a step back. She stood up and adjusted her clothes. "Do you really not know anything?" Victoria was a special disciple of hers, so she had to check one more time. Yeon-woo shook her head. Anastasia frowned. Then, where had her lousy disciple disappeared to? A shadow appeared on her annoyed face. ******. Currently, the artifacts room is in that state. Yeon-woo followed Anastasia into her residence. The garden was a lot different from before. A dark fog swallowed half of the yard and the building. Above it, black smoke wafted up. The barrier around the garden was keeping the black smoke in, but no one knew when it would break. And multiple monsters were already fighting inside of the black smoke. The spite that leaked from the artifact and Anastasia's subordinates were clashing. This was all the result of the adamantine nova disappearing. A few of them seem pretty strong. They won't fall short of me. There are even a few that are stronger. As Shannon said, he couldn't look down on the spite. It won't be hard to tie them down. I can just keep them in the barrier. But then, I won't be free to do anything. And one or two of them might leave secretly by mistake. Anastasia put her pipe in her mouth. She must have bitten down on it hard because her teeth marks were left on it. So if there's something you remember, let me know. Victoria isn't fine yet. If she has the adamantine nova in that state, she's in danger. Her voice was filled with concern for her disciple, unlike her normal self. However, Yeon-woo didn't have any clue about where Victoria went. Just then, he suddenly remembered something Victoria had said. Let's talk later. I have something to ask you. Then, she added something. You received a letter, right? He hadn't been able to respond at the time, but what if there was a secret related to that? Did Victoria receive a letter? A letter? Anastasia looked at Yeon-woo like he had asked something ridiculous. Yeon-woo assumed that Victoria hadn't received anything, but the Black Lion's son sent a letter to Victoria. Is he still alive? Anastasia knew about Victoria's guilt for Khan and frowned. Can I see that letter, too? Yeon-woo gave his letter to Anastasia. Biting her pipe, she examined it. The contents are normal. There doesn't seem to be any spells or charms on it. Phrygia tossed a fine gold powder on the letter. It was a method she used to uncover any strange phenomena in the letter, but nothing happened. She shook her head. It's just a normal letter. So I guess she didn't leave after seeing the letter? If she left to find the Black Lion's son, there's no reason for her to take the adamantine nova. She had left with the adamantine nova without telling her teacher because something urgent had come up. He opened his draconic eyes when he got the letter back. There was no way he could find something that Anastasia and Phrygia couldn't. However, something's up. Definitely. Yeon-woo thought that there was a secret to the letter. If there wasn't, Victoria wouldn't have disappeared like that. Maybe. Yeon-woo ignited holy fire and burned the letter. What are you doing? Anastasia shouted in surprise, but the ashes of the burnt letter shook and landed on the ground. Something was written in the air. Help me. That was enough. All Ryong. She waved the pipe in her hand. Smoke was sprayed out and landed on the black ashes. All kinds of information entered her head, including where she was. Follow me. A Gumiho appeared where she had been. Her red monster eyes were flashing. The Gumiho began to dash away, not even looking back at Yeon-woo or Phrygia. White Wolf. Phrygia quickly summoned the White Wolf, and Yeon-woo spread his wings of fire apart. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The Gumiho was extremely fast despite its large size. It was like looking at Shikuki, one of the 3 signature skills of Alforoni. Normal people wouldn't have been able to follow it. The White Wolf was right behind it. Yeon-woo was on its back with Phrygia for some time. How did you figure it out? She was talking about the hidden information in the letter. How had Yeon-woo been able to find something that neither she nor Anastasia had seen? It's a bien. A bien. Are you talking about the ancestors? Phrygia seemed to want to know how Yeon-woo knew about it, but she didn't ask. On the other hand, Yeon-woo's eyes darkened. What happened? Help? The contents of the letter were fake, so Kong could send it without arousing any suspicions from those binding him. Then what was he asking to be saved from? The Devil Army. That was all he could think of. Or is it something related to Doyle? It could be related to Doyle, whom he hadn't been able to find anything about. Or both. He turned to Frisia. Frisia, where was the letter sent from? She shook her head. I cannot tell you. The price. Even if you want to pay, nothing can be done. Whatever you offer, you won't be able to pay the price. Frisia was very firm. There was nothing she could say. It meant that unlike when she revealed Anastasia's identity, the one behind it this time was greater. However, Yeon-woo thought it was a message that Frisia was trying to deliver to him silently. Then I'll change the deal. Yes or no? Please tell me which one. Frisia didn't say anything. Is it the Devil Army? I cannot tell you. Is Khan staying there? I cannot tell you. Is by the table also making deals with the Devil Army? I cannot tell you. Thank you. Yeon-woo became certain. It is the Devil Army. If not, she would have said that it wasn't. She could easily say that within the conditions of the deal. What he didn't know was why the Devil Army was involved in this. None of what they did was predictable, and there were no patterns to their actions. He didn't even see them trying to avenge themselves when they were humiliated. But they had suddenly appeared somewhere unimaginable. He didn't know what they were planning. However, he was sure of one thing. Khan was Yeon-woo's friend. He couldn't ignore the fact that he was in danger. Even if the creation of Cunning was pushed back. They ran for a while. A few barriers appeared to block them, but they were easily crushed by the charms of the Gumiho. Tack! The Gumiho suddenly stopped running. It was looking at the center of a mountain. Yeon-woo and Frisia turned to look in that direction, too. There was a small shrine far away on the mountain. It wasn't conspicuous, and there didn't seem to be many visitors. The Gumiho and the White Wolf took a few more steps to enter the shrine. There were 7 stone statues near the entrance. They were all bigger than the Gumiho or the White Wolf. They didn't match the theme of the small shrine. Each statue of a dragon, roc, or lion, among others, was standing on its 2 legs, and 2 monkeys in various forms were looking in the direction of their party. On the far left, the biggest stone statue faced them, and it became obvious who the shrine was for. Could it be? Yeon-woo lifted his head opposite of the bull statue, feeling anxious. There was a great monkey statue as well. It looked like a visitor of the temple, a friend of the other statues, or like it was challenging the king statue, the bull. The appearance of the statue was familiar. It was like what he saw in the Monkey King's palace. It was the Monkey King. Yeon-woo realized what the other statues stood for. The 2 monkeys were the Monkey Yun King and the Monkey King, only the yin is the same as Sun Wukong. The statue at the very top was the oldest of the other statues, the Bull Demon King. 7 Knights. Also called the 7 Demon Kings, they were 7 holy beings who had caused chaos alongside the Monkey King. Yeon-woo was standing in the middle of the shrine, no, the temple, of the beings of the Ji sect and Chan sect that even gods were scared of. Also. The pieces of the Ruyi Bang in Yeon-woo's breast began to tremble. New chapters will be fully updated at nov.l/bin.com. As if welcoming him. The Temple of the 7 Demon Kings. He had never seen anything related to them after the Monkey King's palace, so he couldn't help but be surprised. You. Anastasia and Frisia must have felt something as well because they turned back to look at Yeon-woo. Frisia's gaze was especially locked onto Yeon-woo, as if she had discovered something unexpected. However, Yeon-woo didn't have the mind to worry about them. Boo. Yes. Sir. You are sharing the vision of Boo, soul of the witch doctor. Different vestiges began to flood his mind. Blood sword. This is enough with your axe. Damned bastard. Escaping all the way here? It won't go according to your will anymore. I'll avenge the grudges of my comrades. Khan. The first thing he saw from the vestige was Khan. However, he was different from the Khan Yeon-woo knew. The Khan in Yeon-woo's memory always had a relaxed smile on his face, but in the vestige, Khan had ice-cold eyes with a violent aura lashing around him. He had so much blood on him that his armor, clothing, and even the sword he was holding was dripping blood. Blood sword. No nickname suited him better. The players circled around Khan had enmity and wariness in their eyes. What happened? Yeon-woo narrowed his eyes. From what he knew so far, Khan had moved in secret all this time. Yeon-woo thought the Devil Army had ordered him to do so. However, the enmity of the players in the scene seemed abnormal. They appeared to be looking at their enemy. It was a murderous aura that couldn't be summoned on impulse. As if proving their relationship, Khan snorted at the other players. How funny! What? What kind of? You guys are like me. And what? You want to avenge your comrades? How about being more honest to yourselves? Khan raised a corner of his mouth and held out his hand. A shining gold piece of metal rested on his palm. You guys just want this. The chests of the players around Khan trembled. Through their clothes, a ray of golden light was shining. Erng, erng. The golden pieces all woke up as if they wanted to become one. Pieces of the Ruyi Bang. Yeon-woo was silently shocked, looking at the pieces of metal Khan and the other players had. Was he hunting descendants of the Monkey King all this time? Khan's Ruyi Bang piece was noticeably bigger than the other players. There was no way he had found a piece that big, which meant that he had taken pieces from other descendants. Yeon-woo also had a piece of the Ruyi Bang, but he hadn't met any descendants of the Monkey King yet. He thought there were two reasons why that was the case. There weren't many descendants yet, or they had created a secret society among themselves. It seemed like both were right. Then let's begin. Khan took back his Ruyi Bang piece and kicked off from the ground. Blue aura whirled around him like a tornado and created a giant storm. Kwa kwa kwang. And the 72 bien. It seemed like Khan had learned the 72 bien in the Monkey King's palace and made it his. Then, the scene changed once again. After the rough fight, Victoria appeared, holding the adamantine Nova preciously in her arms. She looked around with sad eyes and disappeared through a portal again. The vestige ended there. Yeon-woo swept up his hair. His eyes were dark. All kinds of thoughts ran through his head. Did you see something? Anastasia asked with her pipe in her mouth. Yeon-woo nodded silently, looking at the smoke that was spreading around them. The 5 mountains of penances. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Pat. Chase him. He's currently injured. He can't be far. Don't lose him. We can't let others get him. The magic tower has to get him. Countless players and clans were chasing after one person in the wooded forest and green mountains. The mountains of penances. It was a difficult stage because all senses would be blocked, but they seemed unaffected. The person who was avoiding their chase was Khan. Just how much blood had he spilled? Footprints of blood were left wherever he went. Just a little. Just a little more. Khan clenched his teeth. If I do just a little more, I can find Doyle. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. This is the 20th floor, the gate of the 5 mountains of penances. The moment Yeon-woo arrived on the 20th floor, he could feel that something was different in the air. A heavy and simmering air. Goosebumps rose along his skin just by breathing it in. It was the same feeling as when he was back in Africa. Yeon-woo made sure he was on the right floor. There were multiple player bases along the mountains and hills. There were thousands of players. And all of them were quite skilled. It was a sight that Yeon-woo would never have imagined he'd see on the 20th floor. Wondering what was going on, he looked back at Frisia. However, Frisia was silent, with a calm look in her eyes. He couldn't see her face because of the mask, but the moment he saw her tranquil eyes, he realized something was definitely going on. Frisia had a knowing mien about her. Bien studies. She spoke suddenly. Yeon-woo narrowed his eyes. What's that? The area of Bien is the greatest among magic, spells, alchemy, and charms. It is the path to become a divine good being. Because it's also called a mysterious field of study, some people call it strange studies. In fact, many players want to learn Bien. Yeon-woo realized what Frisia was trying to say and widened his eyes. You're correct. Bien studies has appeared. The discoverer is Blood Sword Khan. And right now, rumors of it have spread, which is why many groups are fighting over it. Yeon-woo whipped his head towards the direction of the mountain. Bien studies. There was no doubt it was the 72 Bien. Yeon-woo already knew that Khan was using the 72 Bien. But he had been found out and was being chased by other players. Something was off. Why now? Did something go wrong while he was fighting with the many descendants of the Monkey King? There was no way that everyone here was a descendant of the Monkey King. And the clan's reasons for it is the slaughter of Blood Sword. Slaughter. Yes. Recently, the Blood Sword attacked a clan called the Crazy N family. Not only did he kill the adults of their clan, he even killed their children and the cattle. Many players are furious because it was such an atrocious act. Yeon-woo knew the Crazy N clan well. They were an affluent family based on the 41st floor. Their ancestor had been a player, and they were now natives who influenced other players. He had attacked such a place? According to Frisia, the people chasing after Khan were those who witnessed the destruction of the Crazy N family. Allied forces of the Crazy N family and those involved with them were chasing after Khan while desperately trying to get revenge. Moreover, one lucky descendant of the Crazy N family who had survived put a hefty bounty on Khan's head. Players began to chase after Khan like sheep. And what? You want to avenge your comrades? Yeon-woo thought of the vestige that he had seen in the Temple of the Seven Demon Kings. The multiple players who had been furious at Khan, and Khan, who had laughed coldly at them. Of course, it's not just the revenge of the Crazy N family that's motivating them. In the process of running away, Khan had shown the many skills he was hiding. Of them, Bien studies had stood out. It was the 72 Bien. Players who couldn't grow anymore or wanted more strength found their new goal. And they even have a reason for it, too. Frisia's words trailed off. Right now. Her eyes pierced through Yeon-woo's mask. The Blood Sword Khan is the common enemy. Her gaze was asking as Yeon-woo was going to do next. Khan was in danger. However, Yeon-woo was rushed for time with his business in Tartarus. She was asking whether he would focus on creating Cunning or help Khan, who he had been searching for all this time. If he helped Khan, he might become the common enemy as well, and there would be problems with carrying out his plans. Did you already know? However, because he couldn't make a hasty judgment, he glared at Frisia with malice. From when I delivered the letter. Frisia nodded. Yeon-woo clenched his teeth. That meant Frisia had just been watching everything despite having known the entire situation. She probably even knew why Victoria had disappeared, but she hadn't said anything. Anastasia bit down on her pipe with an annoyed face, like she was familiar with Frisia's attitude. She was a businesswoman down to the bones. Yeon-woo didn't say much and raised his hand. Nike. Blue holy fire flared up and Nike appeared, flapping his wings. I'll leave it to you. Okay. Nike soared up to the sky, flapping his wings. Yeon-woo could see Nike's vision through their connection. Nike's senses were better for searching for someone than his consciousness. Are you going to save Khan and Victoria? Frisia looked at Yeon-woo with a strange look. I've experienced a similar situation in the past. But there was only one decision I could make back then as well. Yeon-woo thought of when Khan and Doyle were being held by Orangdan. There was only one choice for him. His brother said that he was his hero. He wanted those words to hold true even now. If he left Khan behind and chose Cunning to save his brother, would his brother be happy after learning what happened? He didn't think so. He had to save both his friend and brother. I see. So that is your answer. Frisia seemed to be smiling strangely for a moment, but Yeon-woo didn't notice. He was looking down at the mountain through Nike's shared vision. On the second mountain, a cliff was crumbling with a rough explosion, causing a landslide. There! There! Anastasia must have felt the same thing because she turned into a gumiho and began to dash in that direction. Find you chapters on nfelby.com. Yeon-woo spread his wings of fire and quickly followed. The second mountain, where sight and hearing were blocked. Sacred Red Tree. Why don't you stop now? I think you've been loyal enough to Blood Sword. The players surrounding Victoria shouted through consciousness. This was a stage where all your senses were closed off. Only skilled players who could use consciousness could pass this stage. Their numbers were small, but each and every one of them was outstanding. Nonetheless, Victoria just smiled coldly. Loyalty? Stop talking about useless crap. There's only one thing I'll do here. Her aura flashed. Do you want to die here? Or do you want to take a step back? Spark, spark. Powerful pulses of magic power sparked around Victoria. The object in her hands spun like a top as the storm around her became more fierce. Adamantine Nova. The faces of the players who recognized it turned hard. That was the problem. That was what was tying them down right now. Adamantine Nova was a strong magic power source in itself, but it could also be used as an amplifier. If it was in the hands of a monster, it could have great monstrous energy, and if it was in the hands of a magician, they were presented with great magic power. Victoria was such an outstanding magician that she was called Sacred Red Tree, and she was the disciple of an artisan. What would happen if such a skilled person had the Adamantine Nova? Qua qua que. S. It's another magic power storm. Get down. Sparks flew out around Victoria, and the waves of magic power shot outwards. The players who had been trying to corner Victoria quickly covered themselves with barriers or tore scrolls to escape. The magic power storm swept everything away. The trees, grass, and even the players who hadn't been able to avoid it. What the? No way! Everyone gulped at the sight. All of them were famed in their fields, but they were nothing in front of Victoria. However, some considered it an opportunity. Pat. After a magic power storm of such a scale, there was a required cooldown time. They planned to attack Victoria then. Humph! Victoria just snorted when she saw them and poured her magic power into the Adamantine Nova. Suddenly, rune letters scattered from above Victoria's head. A permanent magic power mechanism. Victoria had worked hard to create an artifact that could supply her with magic power instantly. Adamantine Nova was the inspiration for her idea. A tool that emanated heat after being condensed to the extreme. There was nothing to be afraid of if she could change this heat into magic power. Her teacher, Anastasia, hadn't used it to bind the artifacts for nothing. Qua qua quang. While the players were swept away indiscriminately. I feel this every time I see it, but what an amusing tool. Someone appeared through the smoke. It was an older man who was progressing from middle age to his golden years. He had a nice smile, but the aura around him was sharp. The Ice King. The king of mercenaries who had come out of his secluded living and begun to make his name known around the world again. He clapped his hands, spinning his body like a top. The ground was split, and ice thorns shot at Victoria. Barriers were automatically created around her to block the ice thorns. Each ice thorn destroyed another barrier, and in the meantime, the Ice King was able to reach Victoria. Look here. It's all right to stop now, so how about it? You and those of us who are chasing you are tired. And technically, there's no reason we should be fighting like this. The Ice King spoke in a pleading tone while avoiding Victoria's magic. He had come here on a request, so it wasn't good to be fighting Victoria here. The time and strength he was wasting here was a great loss for him. He needed to take care of Victoria and chase after Khan. And in addition to that calculating aspect, the Ice King actually understood Victoria. Saving a precious comrade from a group of hyenas. If he were in that situation, he would have done the same. No matter what Khan had done. But the problem is, both of his hands shone blue. I'm the villain right now. Victoria lightly flicked her finger as if he wasn't worth answering. Runes floated above her hand for a moment, and a red tongue of fire lashed out. Floor explosion. A superior spell that forced the extraction of the sun's heat. Being hit with it would take your life instantly. However, the Ice King wasn't one to stay still. He clicked his tongue, thinking that there was nothing he could do but stop her, and shot his hands out. Columns embedded underground suddenly popped out. No, they were large enough to seem like ice columns, but they were actually walls of wind. Ice palm. The Ice King's signature skill that caused tall ice tsunamis. With the ice columns, the floor explosion crumbled. Pung. New ice tsunamis covered the sky when he spread his left hand out. Soon after, he spread his right hand apart as well. The ice tsunamis continued to build around Victoria, trapping her in an ice cage. It was the Ice King's solution to force her down. Oh dear! The ice storm was unable to touch Victoria at all. Everything will have been for nothing then. She had run away high above using consecutive blinks. Get the L-test vels on novelbin.c/om. However, contrary to his words, there was a concerned smile on the Ice King's face. Still, you should have stayed in there. Then you wouldn't have gotten hurt. A ray of light poured down as if it had been waiting. The Archer of Silver, Streech. The famous bounty hunter had predicted her escape route and shot his bow. Shot of moonlight. It was a skill that split through air to reach its target. Behind Victoria, a masked assassin appeared through a portal. He was a famous ranker known as Moonwalker. Multiple magic circles rose up around Victoria. At least, they tried to. Before the magic power could gather, Streech's shot of moonlight destroyed the magic circles. The adamantine nova stopped functioning for a moment from the backlash, and Moonwalker aimed for Victoria's throat. Quang! Moonwalker's sword barely missed her throat. The bracelet around her wrist had created a new barrier around her. However, unable to withstand the impact, the bracelet crumpled to pieces. That was what Moonwalker had been after. The crumbled bracelet was what connected Victoria and the adamantine nova. With it broken, she wouldn't be supplied with magic power from the adamantine nova anymore. Victoria quickly stretched out for the adamantine nova, but... Get her! The commander below, who had been watching the situation, nodded. Fitting the title of the greatest mercenary clan, the players of Iron Lion moved quickly. They lifted their iron bows from their shoulders and aimed for Victoria. Kwa kwa kwang. Pung. Every time the magic steel rocket, which another one of the 5 great artisans, Maf, made, was shot, they exploded in the air. Victoria pitched down, her skin blackened from the smoke. No. No. She tried to catch the adamantine nova that was falling before her. Victoria, please help me. She had to have that item. They were still chasing after Khan. She had to stall for time for him to hide. There's someone I want to save. I know it's shameless to sacrifice you like this, but I'm still asking it of you of this. It hadn't been that long since she met Khan. During that short time, Khan had gripped her with a desperate gaze. Please, help me. The request to stall for time. She couldn't forget how the tears were dripping down his face. She didn't know what was moving him, what he was after, or what he was doing. Thinking back, Khan was always like that. Even back when they were on the 5 mountains, he was always playful, but there were times when he was unreadable. He had a gaze like he was looking at something. However, that gaze wasn't on Victoria, and he just smiled bitterly when she asked about it. He was always like that. Someone who didn't let anyone get close. She hated people like that. But strangely, that was what pulled her closer to him. Even though he always teased her, Kon was like a little brother to her. No, looking back at it now, she might have considered him as a man. So she wanted to help him and stall for as much time as she could. She didn't care that he might have been using her. She just wanted to do it. An image of her furious teacher, who was probably looking for her, flashed by her head, but there was nothing she could do except apologize. It seemed she wouldn't even be able to say that now. Just then, her hand was about to reach the adamantine nova, but Moonwalker appeared, sword raised. Ah! That was all Victoria said. Her wrist was disconnected from her arm. She didn't feel any pain. All she could think of was grasping what was in front of her. Things couldn't end like this. Boom! Victoria crashed into the ground. She had fallen from high above without any protection, and her body was crushed. Her spine was shattered, but the small amount of magic power that was left was holding her body together. Multiple players, including players from the Iron Lion, pounced on her. It was to question where Kon was before she took her last breath. You have to deal with her carefully. She's the only person who knows where Bloodsword is. She might be hiding something else, so don't let down your guards. On the orders of the fourth commander of the Iron Lion, Torka, the mercenaries tore dispelling scrolls and bound her hands and feet using magic power binds. Clack, clack. Torka examined Victoria with a serious gaze. The Ice King approached him with a bitter smile. Don't hurt her too much. Are you still going on about that? She's not a bad person. And she's trying to protect your younger master. Take that into consideration. Younger master. Torka's eyes wavered for a moment at those words, but his expression stayed the same. You've dulled. Is that so? Yes. You wouldn't have said that in the past. In Torka's memories, the Ice King was always focused on the most efficient way to accomplish his goals. He was cold-blooded, not caring about what would be sacrificed in the process. I've become older. Also. The Ice King had a mysterious smile. I don't want to become enemies with him. Torka frowned. Are you talking about him again? Haha, you'll understand why I'm saying this if you see him. Even so, nothing will change. Torka snorted. The Hoarder. He had heard about him countless times since he was always at the center of big events. He heard that he was close to Kon as well, but he didn't think much of it. Others said that he had brought down the ruler King Bentik and Triton alone. That he might be the next Nine King. However, Torka thought that was hilarious. Emerging clans? Others might have been in awe of them, but they were just infamous rookies. That was proved by how Triton toppled without being able to fight back. On the other hand, the Iron Lion clan was different. They had a long history, and their forces weren't lacking compared to the large clans. No matter how amazing the Hoarder was, he couldn't fight against them alone. The warning of the Ice King? The same went for that. Like he had said, the Ice King was old. The older you became, the more worries you would have. After this, I should let the higher UPS know and cut all ties with the Ice King. It seems like he's still skilled, but his soft judgment can ruin the battle. Victoria was tied up, and his subordinates told him they had collected the adamantine nova as well. Everyone get ready to return to. Just when Torka was giving orders to return. Quang! A large object that looked like a meteorite fell from the sky, shook the ground. Tens of mercenaries became neatly chopped pieces of flesh and shot up. At the very center, Yeon-woo, with his wings of fire spread apart, was holding Victoria. And... oh dear! He seems quite angry. The Ice King scratched his temples and spoke awkwardly toward Torka. Can I drop out of this round? Torka glared at the Ice King with a flabbergasted face. Regardless, the Ice King took a step back. It was clear he really didn't want to be involved this time. This is why we shouldn't work with old people. Torka could feel the last of his respect towards the Ice King disappearing. The Ice King was fearful. Way too scared for Torka's taste. Just what was the hoarder anyway? Torka nodded at his subordinates in the back. The warriors of Iron Lion all raised their weapons at the hoarder. Cashing. Torka silently raised his twin swords, his trademark weapons, and stepped forward. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. I didn't want to show this side of myself, haha. Victoria smiled bitterly and looked toward Yeon-woo. Through her blood-drenched hair, he could see that her eyes were focused somewhere behind him. In other words, her vision was destroyed. She's in danger. Yeon-woo's eyes hardened as he looked down at Victoria in his arms. Victoria was in critical condition. One of her hands was cut off, and her entire body was covered with burns. On top of that, she had internal injuries from forcing her magic power. It wasn't good. Healing and recovery were at work, but it wasn't enough. Her life was being drained at a quick pace. The Adamantine Nova. Just then, Yeon-woo saw the Adamantine Nova rolling around on the floor in the corner of his eye. It wasn't shining like usual, but there was still a powerful wavelength of magic power emanating from it. When Yeon-woo stretched his hand forward, the Adamantine Nova floated upwards and landed on Victoria's hand. Erng. Victoria rubbed it with her hand. The Adamantine Nova was what she wanted to catch but couldn't in the end. Now, it was back in her possession. However, her empty gaze continued to look blankly in front of her. This time, I wanted to be of help. Yeon-woo thought Victoria was blaming herself for leaving Khan behind on the 5 mountains of penances. The regret from back then was still stacked up in her heart. Yeon-woo didn't know what to say. All he could do was hold her tight. Boo. Check-esh. On his command, 2 inferno sights flared like will-o'-the-wisps behind Yeon-woo. Yes. Sir. Save her. No matter what it takes. Yes. Sir. Just then, the Adamantine Nova began to tremble fervently and shine brilliantly. The light began to wrap around Victoria. Her eyes widened. How? The Adamantine Nova was a tricky item to work with. Even Anastasia had only used it as a core to seal in artifacts, and Victoria herself extracted magic power from it through a tool. And when it was broken, she couldn't use the Adamantine Nova anymore. But the Lich, who seemed to be Yeon-woo's subordinate, appeared unaffected and was using it smoothly. Also, the magic it was using was a superior magic called Healing Potion. Normally, it wasn't magic that Liches, who dealt with death, should have been able to use. However, Boo didn't stop at her curiosity and focused on healing her like Yeon-woo ordered. While Yeon-woo was also absorbed in supplying the magic power for the treatment. Hand over red Deodara, hoarder. Tien, I found that Deodara means sacred tree, and I'll change sacred red tree to red Deodara so the flow is smoother. Many players were starting to close in on them. Their eyes were full of greed. It wasn't visible because of the mask, but Yeon-woo's face was colder than ever. Instead of replying to them, he swished his wings of fire to the side. With the intense heat, the things he didn't want to see were swept away. Kwa. The faces of the players stiffened. All the players who were in Yeon-woo's attack range had been vaporized. Not a single one was left behind. They were all gone. The ones who raised barriers and the ones who were on the defense, there were no exceptions. Only ashes remained where they used to be. The problem was that the great heat was still circulating around Yeon-woo. Shwo! Everyone be careful! Torka, who realized the danger first, shouted, dashing forward. The chiefs of Iron Lion all jumped forward, and even the famed bounty hunter Moonwalker Streech stepped up. Every time the wings of fire thrashed around, intense heat waves spread around them, heating up the atmosphere. Dust clouds rose to blur their vision. Hub. Yeon-woo suddenly popped up next to Moonwalker. He moved as stealthily as a ghost. Yeon-woo had moved so deftly that Moonwalker hadn't been able to read his presence at all. Moonwalker widened his eyes and quickly tried to defend himself, but Yeon-woo was in front of him before he knew it. Kwang! Yeon-woo's fists flashed forward. It was a simple punch. However, its destructive power wasn't simple at all. Moonwalker was blown away. His armor was crushed, and the blood that poured from his mouth had pieces of his internal organs within it. Yeon-woo had shown a shocking amount of strength that shouldn't have been possible while he was holding Victoria with one arm. However, that wasn't the end. Yeon-woo's wings of fire grew even larger, and he quickly chased after Moonwalker, who had been blown far away. Like how Moonwalker cut off Victoria's hand, Yeon-woo planned to slice Moonwalker's throat. Where do you think you're going? Stop! The mercenaries of Iron Lion shot forward. Streech was guarding their backs from behind them. He was planning on launching the shot of moonlight to keep Yeon-woo busy. But Yeon-woo didn't clash with them directly. He suddenly stopped in the air and spun his body. His wings of fire drew a huge whirlwind around him. When the power of the heat was so intense that the players couldn't approach him, something popped out. The mercenaries, who thought it was Yeon-woo, were taken aback. What came from the fire wasn't Yeon-woo. They were monsters dripping with residual poison blood. Behind them, ashy ghosts appeared and confused their surroundings. The second soul. Kyak yak ya. Kiaok. W, what is this? Keek. The monster portents that kept on growing in number quickly amounted to about 50, digging deep between the ranks of the mercenaries. Every time they flung their fingernails around, blood spurted out, and the poisoned mercenaries plopped down to the ground with pale faces. Where is he? Amid all the confusion, Streech hesitated with his arrow nocked, ready to fire. He's gone. He didn't see Yeon-woo at all. Where had he disappeared to? Feeling shivers down his back, he quickly turned around, but... Yuri too late. Yeon-woo appeared behind him and was already striking with his magic bayonet. Pfwo! A fountain of blood splattered out, and the bodiless Streech collapsed on the floor. There was another corpse laid nicely next to Streech's. It was Moonwalker's. 2 rankers had died in an instant. You! Torka ran forward with a red face. No, he tried to. And he may have done it, too, if it wasn't for the monstrous energy that suddenly appeared before he could reach Yeon-woo. Boom! This time, an explosive sound rang out from behind. Torka turned his head in the direction of the sound and frowned. A gumiho that was the size of a house stood above their heads. The howling she released while her 9 tails were pointed up made him shiver. A mere human dares to lay a finger on my disciple. A mere human. Torka wasn't given the chance to reply. When the gumiho stomped one of her feet, fox fire flared up and spread around her in an instant. The rest of the remaining players were swept away. Ah! Torka found himself scooting back on his butt. He was half-conscious. The mighty monstrous energy the gumiho was exuding had killed his fighting spirit. Die. That one word was enough to determine Torka's death. The moment she gave the command, looking at Torka with monster eyes, the rest of his will was cut off. He was gone. Plop! Yeon-woo looked at the only person who remained. What about you, sir? Would you like to fight? Leave me out. I didn't join the fight when you appeared. The Ice King smiled bitterly and looked around at his comrades. No, the things that used to be his comrades. They were completely gone or reduced to ashes. One poor choice had led to their deaths. Yeon-woo nodded silently. He was going to take care of the Ice King while he was here, but because he didn't seem to have any will to fight, Yeon-woo didn't do anything. Still, allow me to take care of the corpses. Feel free to do so. Thank you. The Ice King bowed with genuine gratitude and quietly murmured to himself. It'll be loud this time, too. Get the L-test vels on novelbin.c/om. There's always commotion when the hoarder appears. Such rumors of the hoarder were spread throughout the tower, but it seemed like it wouldn't stop at that this time. The strongest mercenary clan, Iron Lion, wouldn't let this go easily, and with 2 rankers dead, the people chasing after Khan would be greatly shocked. The Ice King already felt tired from the questions he would receive. Asterisk. This is all because of you. Anastasia, having returned to her human form, spoke to Yeon-woo, holding Victoria in her arms. If you didn't appear to encourage this child, this wouldn't have happened. Anastasia left, leaving those words behind. What's up with that granny? She's so rude. Why is she talking to you like that? Shannon muttered to himself in annoyance. Would Victoria have gone searching for Khan even without Yeon-woo's visit? Shannon thought so. Yeon-woo was just stuck in the middle. Anastasia just needed someone to blame. However, Yeon-woo didn't say anything for a while. He had experienced something similar in the past. It wasn't because of Anastasia. His gaze was fixed on Victoria. Victoria had moved to rescue Khan. He was trying to find his brother's soul. The 2 images overlapped. Master. Hey? What? Why are you acting like that suddenly? It's nothing. Yeon-woo shook his head. Shannon was worried about him, but he didn't reflect it and quickly turned around. What are you gonna do now? That granny has quite an attitude. We have to find out what happened here. However, Victoria, who could explain the situation, was gone with Anastasia. Who could he ask? He looked around aimlessly and saw the Ice King about to leave after taking care of the corpses. It was bad to stop him from going after telling him he could leave, but there was nothing he could do. And it's a bit annoying. He felt wronged by what Anastasia said to him. She had blamed him for what the Ice King, technically, had done. Please wait a moment. Thinking that he had done something wrong, the Ice King straightened his back and turned to Yeon-woo. Sweat dripped down his back. What's wrong? I changed my mind. I think you should stay here with us. The Ice King laughed awkwardly. What is it? I need someone to explain the situation. Yeon-woo narrowed his eyes. Do you not want to? He spread his palm open. Black fire flared up and disappeared. Whoosh! Images of Torka and the others being swept away by the fire in an instant flashed through the Ice King's head. Moreover, fire was the perfect weakness of his skill set. Ha, ha ha. He laughed awkwardly. Of course not. It's you who's requesting it, so of course I'll listen to it. I know your teacher, too. Ask me anything you want. He smiled brightly. So, where should I start? News of the battle between Yeon-woo and the mercenaries spread like fire to the players on the 20th floor. The hoarder? Ho ho! So the hoarder is here. The monster covered in bandages, faceless, laughed in a seductive voice. Faceless had an elegant posture, as if they were currently a noble woman. When Faceless spoke again, a warrior's voice came growling out. Yes. There's no way that hyena wouldn't be where these incidents happen. The voice changed again. It was the voice of a bright child looking forward to a delicious meal. He. Why don't we make that guy our friend? I'm curious about what kind of soul he has. I hope it tastes good. Then, Faceless whipped around to turn to the subordinates next to them. The Chest of Souls. The group that followed Faceless. It was also a large-scale group that was considered one of the new emerging clans. We'll pause searching for Blood Sword. Find the hoarder now. It's clear what kind of key he holds. The subordinates bowed and quietly left. Faceless eyes shined through the bandages. They were as calm as a researcher observing their studies. Asterisk. There were other groups moving quickly aside from them. Victoria is the only clue to Blood Sword's location. Cast search magic. Quickly. On Dr. Doom's orders, Necropolis quickly scattered around the stage, casting spells and Torka is dead. The Hoarder is now our enemy, so until you bring his head back on a platter, don't think of returning here. The Iron Lion clan ground their teeth in fury. The Hoarder. Yet. There were rumors that he might have Bian studies, too. That means that he might have pieces of the Ruyi Bang as well. We'll see when we meet him. A few shadows began to move. Yeon-woo's party quickly left the battlefield and arrived at an isolated location. They were far enough from the stage where the restrictions wouldn't affect them. Actually, the fight that just occurred was only a front for something else. The Ice King began to explain the happenings of the stage to Yeon-woo. He didn't seem like he was concealing information. Something else. Get the latest chapters on nfelben.com. Like this. As if he had nothing else to hide, the Ice King dug around in his breast pocket and pulled something else. It was a golden piece of metal, a Ruyi Bang piece. And the pieces of the Ruyi Bang Yeon-woo had shook and came floating out. Yeon-woo's eyes widened. You are a descendant of the Monkey King, too. Yes. Only half, though. Half. Just by having a piece, I gained the title of descendant of the Monkey King, but I don't have much to be proud of. The Ice King laughed bitterly. Yeon-woo didn't force the subject and turned to another topic. But how? How was I able to hide it? Yeon-woo nodded. Pieces of the Ruyi Bang resonated with each other in proximity. It was how descendants of the Monkey King were able to recognize each other. However, Yeon-woo hadn't met any other descendants yet. He hadn't felt anything from the Ice King during the attack on Walpurgis Nacht. The Ice King laughed with a slightly mischievous face. Do you remember what I said? About meeting again if fate led us. Yeon-woo was reminded when the Ice King glanced and smiled at him while the Martial King was talking to him. At the time, Yeon-woo thought it was just an expression of goodbye, but what if that wasn't it? Then. Yes. Actually, I knew you were a descendant of the Monkey King like me. Because of this. The Ice King pointed at the shaking Ruyi Bang piece. But. Right. I knew, but you couldn't feel it. Actually, I always keep this under binds so it can't resonate with other pieces. Of course, I still can't hide it completely. Yeon-woo clicked his tongue. He realized why he couldn't find any descendants of the Monkey King all this time. If there was a way to hide the resonance, there was no way he could find others. However, that meant a few others might have recognized me. It was a mistake. I know what you're thinking, but don't worry. Actually, there aren't any people with pieces on the lower floors. Are they all gathered on the higher floors? It's already been 1,000 years since the pieces of the Ruyi Bang scattered because Monkey King felt like it. Most of the pieces have been discovered by now, and they're in the possession of rankers. Yeon-woo nodded in understanding. That meant things would be fine as long as he was careful about it from then on. Anyways, back to the subject at hand. The fight going on right now is a scramble for pieces. Right. The Ice King nodded heavily. It's a scramble for pieces for the first time in a while. Descendants trying to take each other's pieces. And most of the players here are such descendants. Blood Sword called us here, and we came, even while knowing it would be hell. Like moths drawn to a flame. Moths. That was what the Ice King called everyone who came. Earlier, I said I was only half, right? Yes. In fact, most descendants are halves like me. Having a piece? So what? They don't know how to control it and can't use it as an artifact anyway. It's just an expensive decoration. The Ice King rubbed his piece preciously. To use this, you have to have the 72 bien. the thing that raised the Monkey King to his holy position. Yeon-woo felt the whole picture coming together. The one who spread the rumors that Bien studies has been discovered was Khan. Indeed. Descendants with pieces needed more of them. However, it wasn't just the pieces needed. To be a true descendant, they needed the other condition, the 72 Bien. Khan had known this well. He spread rumors that he had Bien studies on purpose, and he had the descendants of the Monkey King gather somewhere that restricted movement for other rankers but was extremely advantageous to him. And the 20th floor was the perfect place for that. Since Khan had lived here as a sadhu for a long time, there was no better place than here. In the end. So Khan isn't the prey but the predator instead. He wasn't in danger. He had brought it upon himself. The difference between these situations was vast. The problem is that it's not just the descendants who have come but also those interested in the 72 Bien. From different magic towers who needed new fields of magic to learn to clans of alchemists. The Iron Lion clan, who was trying to force their runaway young master back home. Faceless and the Chest of Souls, who joined with something up their sleeves. Mercenaries like Twice and Nocturne, who you've seen before, and bounty hunters after a quick buck. Everyone's jumped in. It's pandemonium. It wouldn't be strange for something to happen in this pandemonium. Here, we're not the hunters. The Ice King's eyes darkened. It's blood sword. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Son of a B. The ranker Sardia glared at his enemy with bloodshot eyes. The archenemy who had killed the comrades he considered his brothers. Even if he died, he didn't want to show a weak side of himself. If you wanted to harm someone, you should have known that you could be the one getting hurt. Quack. Sardia's head fell to the ground with a stroke of the blade. Khan wiped his bloodied face with the back of his hand. They were all motions he was too familiar with recently. Fighting and killing were now common occurrences to him. And collecting it in the end. When Khan stretched his hand out, pieces of the Ruyi Bang came floating up from the corpses. They combined with the pieces that Khan had and began to take shape. Clack, clack. The combined pieces became a bead. It was quite large now, about the size of his palm. One would expect that he would be proud of collecting so many, but his eyes were cold. I guess I've gathered enough for it to be useful now. Just then, a shadow popped up from behind Khan and took the form of a mischievous-looking child. Kindred. The second bishop of the Devil Army smiled greedily and rubbed his hands on the pieces. I've gathered over 200 pieces now. Khan spoke to Kindred's back. However, Kindred didn't turn around. So. He bit his lower lip. That should be enough for him to descend. No. Kindred cut Khan off without mercy. Do you think descending is that easy? Do you think the great heavenly demon is the same as the other mere minor gods on the 98th floor? Minor gods? Many gods and demons would be horrified to hear that. However, the devil army that followed the heavenly demon didn't seem to care. In fact, Kindred spoke like there was no other way to describe the other gods. Except for the heavenly demon, the rest of the beings were just birds trapped in cages, and they were only prey for the heavenly demon when he woke up. The minor gods could manifest in the lower world through apostles or primeval bodies. Why? Because that was all their vessels amounted to. However, the heavenly demon was different. He needed a large vessel to descend, and one of the great artifacts required for it was the Ruyi Bang. The more pieces, the better. It was the reason why Kindred was making Khan gather them. Looking at Kindred rubbing the pieces greedily, Khan's fingers shook. He lost count of how many times he wanted to stab Kindred in the back. However, Doyle's safety was in their hands, and he didn't have any power to save Doyle at the moment. There was only one choice he could make in the end. Becoming the Devil Army's marionette. Why don't you attack me? I'm sure you want to. Kindred smiled coldly as if he could read Khan's mind. Khan bowed. I never had any disrespectful intentions. I gravely apologize if you felt that way, sir. Yuri no fun. Back when we were Sadhu, you were pretty amusing. Kindred smirked. Anyways, as you said, we've gathered quite a bit now. If we gather just a little more, I expect it will be able to function as a sacrificial vessel. Khan clenched his fist. The moment he had been waiting for had come. The sacrificial vessel. The vessel they were trying to create with pieces of the Ruyi Bang. With this much, the heavenly demon's other face and the heavenly demon's friend will be satisfied. Kindred had searched for the Monkey King's shedding for 10 years with all his senses blocked. If he could serve the one who was somewhere in the Monkey King's palace here. With the heavenly demon in a deep slumber, they could serve another being who would lead the devil army instead of him. This was the devil army's eternal mission. Because they were a religious cult, the fact that their god was in a deep slumber affected them greatly. However, even after meeting the shedding of the Monkey King after all that time, he couldn't serve him as their king. The shedding had already become one with the palace. There was no way to bring him out. After thinking of a solution with the other bishops, they were able to find a loophole. If they couldn't bring the shedding out, they could use a vessel to move it. That was how he had thought of using the Ruyi Bang. However, the pieces that the devil army had already collected were being used. They had to gather other pieces. It was then that Khan had begun to move. Doyle was bound to the devil army for a particular reason. Khan had made a deal with the devil army to save Doyle. He would become their faithful dog, and they would give Doyle over after he finished what he needed to do. So work harder. Kindred took all the pieces and disappeared. It was obvious where he was going, back to the palace to appease the shedding. Footprints of blood were left behind where he left. Corpses were piled up on the ground. I apologize. The quiet words Khan muttered to himself blew away in the wind. Crazy bee. Anastasia cursed as she healed her disciple's destroyed arms and eyes. Victoria was deep in sleep from exhaustion. Looking at her face, Anastasia let out a deep sigh. She knew best how her disciple felt all this time. Victoria couldn't do anything because she was drowning in guilt, and when she finally got back to her daily life, she always looked depressed. For the last 100 years, Anastasia had only seen her disciple act shamelessly. It had been ages since she saw her disciple acting like this. When Victoria had thrown a tantrum saying she needed to save Khan, Anastasia didn't help her and locked her in a room instead. If she let her go, Victoria would really go insane. Anastasia didn't want to see her one and only disciple become a crazy bee. But she had ended up like this in the end. There was nothing Anastasia could do but scold her as she smoked the pipe in her mouth. Victoria. Just then, a breeze silently gathered and took the form of a human. Rebecca settled down and held Victoria in her arms to console her old friend. Some time passed like that, and Victoria slowly opened her eyes. Did you wake up? You little teacher. B. Sorry. You did a cute number on the Adamantine Nova. Victoria couldn't look Anastasia in the eyes and dropped her head. In case it was stolen by other people. Fine. That would have been an issue, so I understand. But the problem is that things became tricky even for me. The moment Anastasia checked the Adamantine Nova, she was almost scared to death. There was a spell engraved clearly on it. It was an item-binding contract. It was set so if the Adamantine Nova was some distance away from Victoria, it would explode immediately. Also, because it was bound, it would take a while to release it. It meant one thing. Even in that state, she's gonna help out that Khan bastard or whatever his name is. Anastasia was going to scold her again but just sighed and took the pipe out of her mouth. White smoke spread around her. The two didn't say anything for a while. Victoria's head hung low, and Anastasia just silently held her pipe in her mouth. Then, Anastasia spoke up again. So. Yes. Anastasia shouted in an annoyed voice. So do you feel better after going through all that now? Victoria smiled bitterly. A bit. HAAA. You push over. The smoke wrapped around Anastasia and then disappeared. Still, if you feel a bit better now, that's good. But no more. But teacher. No means no. Anastasia cut her off. She wouldn't allow any more rebellion. She seemed like she would forcefully hold Victoria back if she didn't listen. Victoria clenched her teeth. She had stalled for time as she wanted, but that was it. She still hadn't saved Khan. Even now, he was probably off fighting other people. Her gaze fell towards the adamantine nova. Anastasia had said that it was tricky for her because there was a binding spell on it. That meant that for the time being, she would be the only person able to use it. Anastasia wouldn't be able to stop her if she used that. Wait. Then how did Kane's subordinate use that? At first, she had thought that the spell hadn't worked properly. She was extremely curious, but she decided to leave it alone and think about how to activate the adamantine nova. If she could escape and create a temporary tool to use it. Anastasia was about to shout at her disciple, who hadn't given up hope yet. Just then. That's enough, Victoria. Yeon-woo suddenly stepped through the door. Behind him, the Ice King followed with an awkward smile. Why didn't you kill him? I'm sure I told you to cut off his head and send it back to Iron Lion. Anastasia reproached Kane. The Ice King had a sour face. Regardless of whether he was uncomfortable, Anastasia took out her anger on Yeon-woo for bringing the Ice King. The Ice King was the one who hurt Victoria the most, so of course she would be furious. However, Yeon-woo firmly shook his head. No. He promised to help us from now. How do you know that? We made a pledge. Visjate N. Felben, CM for new updates. He was speaking about the soul contract that they pledged on a demon's name. If they broke the conditions of the contract, their soul would be sold to a demon. The Ice King signed. He would die if he didn't do it, so he didn't have any other choice. Anastasia put her pipe in her mouth. She still didn't look satisfied. Anyways. So. I learned the cause of this incident. The cause. Anastasia had an inquisitive expression. He sighed at the thought of having to repeat everything the Ice King said, but he stepped up to explain the fight for Bian studies. The moment the words Ruyi Bang and descendants of the Monkey King came up, Anastasia's eyes became bigger. Having lived for 1,000 years, she knew the many secrets of the tower, so naturally, she had heard about the Ruyi Bang pieces. At the time, she just thought it was a strange game the Monkey King had left behind, but it had unexpectedly appeared in front of her. When he finished explaining, Anastasia looked back at Frisia as if asking if it was all true. Frisia silently nodded. Then, she just continued to stand silently, like there was nothing else she had to add. Anastasia's face hardened further. So then this bee was played. Victoria shut her mouth. It was Yeon-woo who answered instead. That's probably not it. You said that Blood Sword or whoever set everything up to gather pieces, no? And this bee was played by him. Khan is probably being used. After hearing the cause of this incident from the Ice King, Yeon-woo was able to solve the mystery behind Khan. The first clue was the words the letter left behind after becoming ash. He still couldn't forget what they said. Help me. In the tutorial, Khan had headed towards Orangtan even knowing that he would be in danger. He had requested help. Looking back at it now, Khan had been giving him signals from the Monkey King's palace. When seeing the stones with the 72 Bian on it, Khan had been staring at them blatantly, as if searching for something. He tried to say something to Yeon-woo several times, but he just shook his head and stopped himself. Despite knowing what it was about, Yeon-woo left him alone, thinking Khan wasn't ready to share yet. He thought Khan would explain everything to him someday. But if that wasn't it? If he was ready to speak but couldn't? If Yeon-woo's laid-back attitude had been too relaxed? Then Khan wasn't asking for help for himself. It's been a while since I was separated from him. A brother-like fellow he had split up with. Doyle. Could he have been asking for Yeon-woo's help to help that child? Athena looks at you with sad eyes. Just then, a message popped up for the first time in a while after he left Tartarus. However, please don't pity me. Yeon-woo rejected her gaze. Athena looks at you with sad eyes. Yeon-woo ignored Athena's message and explained his thinking. And your proof? I have none. But what do you want me to believe? You don't have to believe me. Anastasia raised an eyebrow in disbelief. What? I didn't say it for you to understand. I only came to convince Victoria. Yeon-woo didn't care about Anastasia's glare and turned to Victoria, who was staring blankly at him. It's only a guess. However, I don't think I'm wrong. What do you think, Victoria? I think you're right. And it's probably the Devil Army pulling the strings and threatening Khan. Victoria silently nodded and clenched her fists. When Khan had first met her, he only asked for help and nothing else. The moment she heard what Yeon-woo said, she felt like her head was clearing up. The Khan she knew was someone who would throw himself away to protect someone special to him. So it's not just the people here who you need to deal with to help Khan, you also need to fight the Devil Army. You might become an enemy of all the rankers here. Unless you were one of the 9 kings, fighting a war with a large clan like the Devil Army wouldn't be easy. However, Yeon-woo said he was going to fight. Victoria quickly checked the magic power remaining in her body. Thankfully, she was healed somewhat from the monstrous power that Anastasia planted in her. It would be hard for her to fight, but she could support from the back. She thought Yeon-woo was obviously going to ask for her help. So, Anastasia must have thought the same thing because she was about to remove the pipe from her mouth to say something, but... Please stay here. What? They were completely unexpected words. If you step up, you'll only be in more danger. He was telling her to stay here because she'd be a burden. The only reason Yeon-woo was telling her this was so she wouldn't chase after him if he quietly disappeared. Victoria bit her lower lip. The fact that she couldn't be of any help and would be a burden reminded her of back when she was powerless on the 5 mountains of penances. However, Yeon-woo immediately turned away after he finished. Along with the words that he would be back with Khan soon. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Seseung Neem. Stupid B. After Yeon-woo left, Victoria clenched her teeth in consideration for a while and called for Anastasia. However, Anastasia didn't say much and just put the pipe back in her mouth. Because she was her one and only disciple, Victoria knew what it meant. Thank you. Victoria bowed and put a shirt on to leave. The adamantine Nova followed her like a tail as she ran out the door. Can you send her like that? She's the first child you were affectionate for. Frisia, who had been standing silently in the back, asked. Her face couldn't be seen because she was wearing her wooden mask, but her eyes were curved. Her voice made it seem like she was smiling. Not liking Frisia's attitude, Anastasia frowned and pulled out her pipe with anger. She'll do what she needs to do. How long do I have to take care of her? You've changed, Anastasia. I don't know who she takes after that, she's so stupid. Tisk. I should have stopped her when she said she was going to do that weird sadhu thing. Despite her harsh words, her voice was filled with concern. There's no teacher who can beat their disciple. Through the smoke, Anastasia looked blankly in front of her. And nothing is as scary as a woman blinded by love.